The pit glowed under the full moon, its jagged edges illuminated by torchlight as shadows played upon the faces of the gathered crowd. The chants and jeers of the onlookers echoed in the humid air, rising and falling like the tides. Fitzroy and Garret stood near the edge, watching the combat unfold below with a mix of awe and dread. The fighters moved like animals, hungry, desperate, calculating. The clash of metal on metal rang out, punctuated by grunts and the dull thud of bodies hitting the pit's earthen floor. And with it, a victor emerged bloodied but triumphant, his eyes wild as he bowed before Sahale. She returned the gesture, her white eyes gleaming like moonlight trapped in glass. Fitzroy shivered as the pirate left the arena, his prize of flesh pressed into his arms, a sobbing, hollow-eyed figure dragged away into the darkness. Time and again, this ritual played out with the phasing of the full moon, and Fitzroy always turned away, his stomach twisting. But Garret's gaze forever remained fixed on the pit, unblinking. The crowd erupted again as two older pirates entered the pit, their movements deliberate but heavy, like men carrying the weight of years spent in violence. They waited, their weapons scattered around them, the tension rising as Sahale stood, her presence commanding. She turned to Fitzroy and Garret, her gaze locking onto them with an intensity that stilled the air around them. Now. It is your turn. Fitzroy froze, his breath catching in his throat. Garret stiffened, his jaw tight, his hands balled into fists. Sahale motioned toward the pit, her movement graceful but unyielding. The crowd began to chant, their voices growing louder, their bodies swaying with anticipation. Fitzroy felt his feet move before his mind could catch up, his heart hammering in his chest as he stepped toward the pit. Garret followed, his expression grim, his steps stumbling in reluctance. The boys entered the pit, the humid air pressing down on them like a weight. They bowed to Sahale, mimicking the gestures of the seasoned fighters, and turned toward their opponents. The pirates' eyes were sharp, their bodies taut, and then suddenly, as before, action. A mad scramble as they raced toward the scattered weapons. Fitzroy and Garret hesitated, their movements clumsy and uncertain. The crowd jeered, their chants shifting to mockery as the boys struggled to keep pace. The fight erupted with brutal force. Fitzroy stumbled backward as one of the pirates lunged at him, the dull blade of a sword slicing through the air and narrowly missing his chest. Garret tripped over a loose piece of debris, the sharp edges of the pit's traps digging into his palms as he scrambled to his feet. The old man stood at the edge, his pale eyes watching with an expression that betrayed no emotion. The monkeys perched on his shoulders and staff whimpered softly, their small hands covering their faces whenever the boys faltered. Even the monkey with sewn-shut eyes seemed to sense the danger, its body trembling as the fight dragged on. There is no room for hesitation in the pit, no space for thought beyond survival. It swallows you whole, strips you bare, leaves you with only the animal that hides beneath the surface. Fitzroy felt his confidence grow as the fight wore on, his strikes sharper, his movements more deliberate. Garret matched him, his steps quick, his blows landing with precision. But still, they held back. Even when the battle had turned in their favor and their adversaries tired of the fight, there was hesitation. Fitzroy felt his hands begin to tremble, not from exhaustion of his weapon's weight, but of knowing that he could land a finishing blow and still did not. And across from him, Garret was fighting a different battle. A battle where the desire to strike was one he wanted to give into, a release against all that he had to endure since arriving on this island. And the crowd begged him to give in to the darkness. Their chants grew louder, more desperate, their voices demanding blood. Fitzroy charged, knocking the sword from his opponent's grasp, his foot slamming into the pirate's ribs with a sickening crunch. And a moment later, Garret disarmed his own opponent, a swift strike, sending the man sprawling onto the ground. The boys stood victorious, their breaths ragged, their bodies trembling. But they knew the fight could not end, not without blood staining the sand. The crowd roared, their chants morphing into a single, thunderous demand. Kill! Kill! Fitzroy felt his chest tighten, his gaze darting between his opponent and Sahale. She watched them, her expression unreadable, waiting for their decision. Garret answered her call. Snatching a dagger from the ground and marching toward his opponent, his steps were firm, his body tense, his arm raised high, bearing the weight of deliverance. And then, Sahel appeared in the pit. Moving with a speed that defied logic, her presence sudden and overwhelming. Her hand caught Garret's wrist, halting his strike mid-air. The crowd instantly fell silent, their chants replaced by a heavy, oppressive quiet. Garret's eyes met Sahel's, his arm trembling as the dagger fell from his grip. And like that, she led him out of the pit, her movements deliberate, her command unquestionable. Fitzroy stood frozen, his body rigid, his mind racing as the pit's darkness swallowed Garret and Sahel whole. That night, Sahel made love to Garret, his reward of flesh for tempting the beast out of him. Perhaps I resented it at the time. Not my companion, but a prize, a reward for death. To kill for a reward, one as primal as the act that earned it. The air inside the tent was warm and heavy, saturated with the day's exhaustion. The solitary flame of a single candle flickered weakly on the table beside Fitzroy, its glow casting long, wavering shadows over the worn canvas walls. Fitzroy sat cross-legged on his cot, the book balanced in his lap, its weathered pages spread open to a passage on human nature. His fingers traced the faded text as his tired eyes struggled to follow the rhythm of the words. The jungle outside was alive with the ceaseless chirping of crickets, their melody weaving in and out of the distant murmurs of the pirate camp. The flap of the tent stirred suddenly, and Garret entered. His face was drawn, his eyes bloodshot, and his steps unsteady, as though the weight of the night had been strung on his shoulders like a yoke. Fitzroy glanced up briefly, his lips parting as if to speak, but the words stalled in his throat. Garret offered no acknowledgement. He moved to his cot and collapsed onto it, his body sinking into the thin mattress like a stone dropped into still water. Within moments, his breathing slowed, the measured cadence of sleep overtaking him. Fitzroy watched him for a moment, his own weariness paling in the shadow of his companion's turmoil. He closed his book softly, resting it on the edge of the cot as he leaned back. The dim light of the candle illuminated his face, revealing lines of fatigue that did not belong to a boy his age. For all his triumph, my companion did not sleep well that night. Sahel had tried to massage his conscience. She explained that compassion was no gauge of virtue. He rubbed his eyes, the motion slow and deliberate, before turning his gaze toward the ceiling of the tent. The dim light cast a faint tapestry of patterns above him, shapes that shifted with the flame's dance. His mind wandered, the book's teachings mingling with the memories of the pit, the roar of the crowd, the cries of the defeated. Fitzroy understood the weight Garret carried, though he could never share it, not fully. Garret had faced the beast that night, but not in the pit. It was in himself, and now it prowled just beneath the surface. Compassion will have a lioness tear into the flesh of any who would do her cubs harm. Compassion can lead one to kill. The candle's flame faltered as a slight breeze slipped through the cracks in the tent, and Fitzroy reached for it. His thumb and finger pinched the wick, extinguishing the light with a soft hiss. The darkness rushed in to claim the space, erasing the shadows and leaving only the faint outline of the cot where Garret lay and the steady chorus of crickets outside. Its virtues come shackled to blind savagery. Fitzroy shifted under the thin blanket, his body curling instinctively against the chill that seeped through the canvas walls. His eyes remained open, searching the darkness as though it might hold answers to the questions he hadn't yet dared to ask. The truth gnawed at him, a relentless beast that stirred with every breath, every memory of the pit. Compassion, virtue, savagery. They were no longer distant concepts. They were real, tangible, wrapped in flesh and blood. And in the quiet stillness of the tent, Fitzroy knew he couldn't escape them. Not tonight. Not ever.